Harry's wife? I suppose I have to say yes. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Another interesting revelation from Spare, this time involving the late Queen, which in a sense raises more questions than the answers that Harry supposes that it provides. By Victoria Ward on the Telegraph tells us Queen Elizabeth's cryptic response to Prince Harry when he asked permission to marry Harry's wife. Queen Elizabeth II gave the Duke of Sussex a cryptic response when he asked her permission to marry Harry's wife, he reveals in his memoir. Prince Harry was unsure whether his grandmother was trying to tell him she wanted to refuse his request, was being sarcastic, or the Duke feared he was doomed. Margaret, he writes, in reference to his great aunt, Princess Margaret, who was not allowed to marry the love of her life, divorcee Peter Townsend. The Duke recounts the moment he plucked up the courage to ask the Queen in his forthcoming book, Spare, which is officially published on Tuesday but was released early in Spain. He admits he was scared and always nervous in her presence. Well, so you should, you big ginger traitor. And the moment was made even more awkward when the Queen simply replied, "Well, then I suppose I'll have to say yes." Harry had no idea what she was saying. Well, that's not a surprise. He's a dimwit. She felt she had to say yes. He writes, she felt she had to say yes. Did that mean that she was saying yes but wanted to say no? I didn't understand. Was she being sarcastic, ironic, deliberately cryptic? Was she allowing herself a bit of wordplay? I don't remember my grandmother being a fan of wordplay, and this would have been the strangest time to start being one, without mentioning tremendously inappropriate. Well, it seems to me that the Queen would have ensured that Harry's wife was vetted beforehand. Makes sense. The Queen has access to a large staff, particular resources and money, and that it would be necessary to ensure that the background and behaviours associated with Harry's wife would have been appropriately vetted, and to my mind there's no doubt that this would have been undertaken. Now, given the fact that various amateur detectives across the internet have uncovered a variety of dubious behaviours associated with Harry's wife, which include gluing somebody's eyes shut at school, for which compensation had to be paid, and it was hushed up. Allegations of her being a yacht girl, basically servicing men for money. Allegations that she became pregnant on an internship in Argentina and had an abortion. Suggestions that she'd already had a hysterectomy. Suggestions that she actually married somebody before Trevor Engelson and had a child with that person, and the child had been given away. Accusations about that she should never be left with children. And those are just some of them which have come to the fore. And whether there is any substance in all of that is something, of course, you can decide for yourselves. But there's plenty of suspect behaviour. And, of course, given the fact that she's a narcissist, it's no surprise that there's this suspect behaviour, because she will have acted with a sense of entitlement, an absence of emotional empathy. Even with some of the things which she said that had happened, and we find out that they actually didn't, in a way, relatively harmless lies. For instance, saying that she attended a naked spa and ate noodles there with her mother, when it's apparent that didn't take place. In the general scheme of things, it's not such a big issue, other than it shows, of course, her propensity to tell lies and demonstrates that what she tells you is not credible. But the point is this: it's highly likely that the Queen had access to a lot of this information beforehand. And the Queen, indomitable individual that she is, isn't just going to go, well, do you know what, Harry? Let's welcome in a troublemaker like a Trojan horse who will then come out of the Trojan horse in the middle of the night and start basically putting the royal family figuratively to the sword. It is beyond question that the Queen and other members of the royal family knew about some of the less attractive, if we could put it that way, aspects of Harry's wife's behaviour, past and behaviours. Yet she was still admitted. And I think what we're getting here with this recollection is part of the story. That Harry hasn't told us what he actually said to the Queen. Harry hasn't actually said what his sort of spiel was in terms of seeking permission. It's long been rumoured, of course, that Harry's wife said that she was pregnant to Harry and therefore he thought he ought to do the decent thing, and that similarly that he would say that to the Queen to ensure the permission was granted. Or that a threat was made that if you don't grant it, we're going to say that you're all racists. Interestingly, for the Queen to respond that she felt she had to say yes, it does make it sound as though she's been put in a position of compromise, and one that she did not actually welcome. Otherwise, why would she say so? Ordinarily, if she didn't think it was appropriate, she's not some shrinking violet. She'd been on the throne for over 60 years. If she wanted to say no, she would do so. And if old Ginger Bollocks got upset, well, tough titty. She would slap him, she would get hold of him, put him over her lap and spank his body until it was red. The Queen has dealt with more difficult individuals than old Ginger Bollocks. Yet the fact that she felt she had to say yes suggests that she was, in essence, blackmailed in some way. And I think what we're dealing with here is the fact that Harry wants to make another song and dance about the way that the Queen had responded. Because what he really wanted, and of course what Harry's wife wanted, was this. Yes! Yes! Absolutely yes! Marry her! She's amazing and beautiful and wonderful and kind and empathic. Little animals run towards her to be petted. She cures cancer if she touches people. She makes the sun shine by removing dark clouds. She'd be an absolute boon and asset to the royal family. You absolutely must marry her. Because remember again, in Harry's wife's world, in her deluded bubble, she functions in a film or a novel. I've mentioned in parts passing with the myth carriage, the way that's all described. She believes that the Queen ought to have gone, yes, we will allow Harry's wife into the family. In fact, we are so grateful that she's chosen to marry into us. We're so fortunate. Here, have lots of gold and jewels and tiara and money, because we're so grateful that you, as a modernising, strong, independent feminist, are joining the royal family. Oh, what great day this is, of such moment that we have the biracial American actress come deign to allow us to be entered into her world. That's how she sees it. She doesn't see it that she's lucky to be involved in an institution. She doesn't see that it's an absolute elevation for her in terms of status, privilege and wealth. She sees it that they are fortunate to have her agree to marry in. And therefore, the fact that the Queen went, well, I feel I have to say yes, isn't what Harry's wife wanted to hear. So as part of her grudge list, once again, Harry is instructed to write about this and to suggest, what was the Queen going on about? What did she mean? Was she engaging in wordplay? What is all of this? But I think what's really happened here is Harry's gone there with extortion on the mind, with emotional blackmail in order to get the permission, and then has trotted out something, possibly along the lines of what I've mentioned. The Queen then has felt, well, I've got no choice really. I suppose I have to say yes. And thereafter, because that is not the unequivocal delight of a monarch thrilled to have Harry's wife join the royal family, this has rankled with Harry's wife as a threat to control, resulting in this attempt to correct it. The article continues by explaining the Duke had earlier confided in his aides, Ed Lane Fox and Jason Knorf, that he wanted to propose, but was told there were strict rules governing such things and that first and foremost he would have to ask his grandmother. Harry suggests he was taken aback by the suggestion, asking if that was a real rule. Possibly that could be a real reaction from the dimwit. It didn't make any sense, he writes. A grown man asking his grandmother for permission to marry. Harry, she's the Queen. However, he recalls the absurdity of his father, then 56, having to ask permission to marry the Queen Consort. The Duke picked an October 2017 family shooting trip at Sandringham to make his move. He opted not to tell Prince William of his plans because he'd already warned him against it. Too fast, too soon, he's alleged to have said. Although it seems that Harry's changed his story about that. See parts pass him. Harry claims his brother was pretty discouraging about him dating an American actress at all, implying that her nationality and profession was akin to being a convicted criminal. Horseshit. That's the paranoia of Harry's wife to work there, seeking again to smear Prince William. On the day in question, he watched the late Queen drive a Range Rover into the middle of a field to look for dead birds, alone and with no security. I tried to engage her in some light chat to loosen her up, he writes. The full seriousness of all this was finally starting to sink in. The Duke muses over what would happen if his grandmother said no. Would he dare to disobey her, or would he have had to end his relationship with Harry's wife? This moment was either the start of my life or the end, he says. It would all come down to the words I chose, how I delivered them, and how Granny heard them. With a dead bird in each hand, he chased after the Queen as she approached her vehicle, surrounded by hunting dogs. I needed to get to it without one more second of hesitation, he writes. I saw her waiting for me to speak and not waiting patiently. Her expression screamed, "Out with it!" He says, "Oh, Granny, you already know that I love Harry's wife a lot, and I've decided that I'd like to ask her to marry me, and that they've told me that, well, I have to get your authorization before asking for her hand." She replies, "You have to do that?" "Oh, yes," he says, "that's what your people have said, and mine too." The Duke reveals her expression was impenetrable during an agonizingly long pause. Eventually she replies, "Well then, I suppose I have to say yes." He finally realises that she has given him permission to marry and splutters, "Thank you." He was desperate to hug her, he says, but did not. Instead, he helped her into the vehicle, and they made their way back to the rest of the family. I suspect there was far more to it than what he's actually relayed there, because otherwise that would be a rather odd response from the Queen. And I think there's more in terms of what she knew, and also more in terms of what Harry had actually said. Those are my observations upon it, which shows again the influence of Harry's wife in all of this. I wonder what the observations are below the line in that respect. Smee again. "Oh, now I see, it's the late Queen's fault. Hapless Harry is delilile in my humble, medically unqualified opinion. He is semi-crazed, treacherous twerp. To add to his woes, he's married to a horrendous, hateful harridan." No holding back there in terms of the observations. J. Hodson, "Of course the late Queen didn't want you to marry her, you moron. She'd had a lifetime to hone her discernment skills, and you a gold-digging, scheming, lying narcissist when she saw one." No holding back there. Hannah Reid, "It didn't make any sense," he writes, a grown man asking his grandmother for permission to marry. Unless your grandmother is Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. I cannot believe what an idiot this man is. Peter Dunlop, "Are you sure it was the ghostwriter? He's supposed to be quite good. I suspect another influence instead." PJ Griffiths, "Someone wrote that the ghostwriter left the project before it actually finished." Patricia Clausen too, "Our late Queen was no fool. She could have been very doubtful about the suitability of Harry's wife, not because of her race, but because of her nationality and the career that she had chosen. The cultures are very different. Her Majesty probably thought that to refuse would do more harm than good, and anyway, perhaps it would turn out okay after all. She certainly did her best to smooth Harry's wife's path and make her welcome, but alas, to little avail." Top Hat, "It didn't make any sense," he writes, a grown man asking his grandmother for permission to marry. Harry inadvertently reveals that despite his Eton education, he knows nothing about English history or the British Constitution. Emma Morley. She was a wise old bird, Harry, and had seen it all. She saw right through Harry's wife and was trying to tell you it was a bad idea. I think she might just have been right. Lee Van der Pay, EU, nothing. Harry claims his brother was pretty discouraging about him dating an American actress at all, implying that a nationality and profession was akin to being a convicted criminal. Sounds like William would be a decent king when the time comes. At the very least, it seems as though he's a good judge of character. Charles Wilson, divorcee after 1 year, woke, California with strange views, estranged from her family, massively aspirational. What could possibly go wrong? The Queen, who was so perceptive, saw all of this. Her words were classic backhanded compliment, akin to, well, if you must, hope you know what you're doing. The odds aren't great. Keith Anderson, curious, he's always portrayed his relationship to our late Queen as one of cherished intimacy, yet he was unable to ask her to elaborate on her reaction to his question. Daniel Weston, there's nothing cryptic about that, you cretin. Your grandmother was telling you she didn't think it was a good idea, but didn't think she should say no to you. Those are the observations from a few people below the line. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.